I'm going to talk about some of the changes that we had involving MyTax Illinois for the end of the year. Luckily, we didn't have as major of changes as we did last year with the redirection of the Illinois 1040. However, there have been some minor cosmetic and just updates to the Illinois 1040 going into this year for tax year 2023. So this year we will still have the non-login option for MyTax Illinois. When filing opens, we will have the file a 2023 Illinois 1040 link, as opposed to the file a 22 Illinois 1040 link, and that would go away for that year. Meaning that if you need to file a 2022 tax return after the 24 or 23 filing opens up, you will need a MyTax Illinois account, and it would still be available there. It's just the non-login option is going away. Another thing is a reminder, 23 still doesn't have a amended option when it comes to the 2023 Illinois 1040. And with things going out of statute and different things, currently the only option for an amended return for a personal income tax return Illinois 1040 is 2021 at this time, meaning that when we go into 2024, no, you won't be able to amend an Illinois 1040 through MyTax Illinois. So if you're filing the 23 return, you would and you're doing a non-login option, you would click the File a 2023 Illinois 1040. And you'd be presented with the information as to who is eligible to file. For the most part, these are all the same requirements as last year, whereas last year you were required to have filed a 2021 return. Now you have to have filed a 2022 return. You have to have been a full resident in Illinois during the entirety of 2023. And then there's some income requirements there as far as where you earned income and that kind of thing to be able to use MyTax Illinois. One of the things that we did add as a result of people suggesting it throughout the filing season was that we added the ability to use MyTax Illinois if you had U.S. interest, which would be line 22 of the Schedule M, as well as 529 contributions, so Bright Directions, Bright Start, things like that, which would be line 39 of the Schedule M to be able to do that. So if you have questions when you get there, you can read through that entire list and determine whether or not you are able to use MyTax Illinois this year for your filing options. Now, one of the things that we did add is up there in the upper right-hand corner, and you can see the arrow pointing to it, is that if you read through that and determine that you are not able to file using MyTax Illinois, there is a link that will take you to a page that provides alternate electronic filing options depending on your tax situation and which returns you may need to file. The eligibility questions page for the Illinois 1040 for 2023 was updated to reflect the needs for the 2023 return. There will be really 4 questions there. The first one being your filing status. And we do allow any of the 5 filing statuses that we have. So single, married filing joint, married filing separate, widowed, head of household. You can all use those to use MyTax Illinois for 2023. All 3 the questions below that do have a yes/no answer. They are all required, and they must all be answered yes in order to take that in. So you have to have filed a prior year return. you must be a full year resident for the entirety of 2023. And if you're married filing joint, that does mean that both of you have to be a full year resident for that 2023 period. And then additionally, it must be an original return. You cannot make an amended return, and you can't have started a return or submitted a return in another method and have it go through. The next page, last year would have had a series of 7 questions that had to have gone through. Some of them were to determine the actual eligibility. Others were determined just what it was going to show later on in the return. Now they have separated those out so that the eligibility questions are there. Each of those questions you can click onto and it'll give some additional information as to what those mean if you have questions about that. But in general, the 3 eligibility questions, you have to be able to mark no that you don't have any Illinois additions that were not included as part of the AGI or adjusted gross income from the federal return. You must not have had any subtractions other than the ones listed. So military pay, U.S. Treasury bonds and interest, and then the 529 plans, along with some others that are listed there. And then you should not have any other credits or payments other than the ones listed in there. So if you can mark all no to all 3 of those, then you would be eligible to use MyTax Illinois for 2023. There will be a next button, and you just click that next button, and it'll take you to the next page. Which the questions that we had previously that were all part of that 7 questions on the previous page are now its own page called basic information. These questions have to be completed. They are required, but they really only help to determine what the user is going to see later on in the return. So asking, do you have earned income credit? Do you have property tax? Do you want to take use tax? Do you have W-2s? Things like that just help determine, so we're not having to show you everything that is going through when you're using the return. The 2023 Illinois 1040 identity verification page has not changed. It still will require it. It still requires the reCAPTCHA thing and all the information. So you do need to have your social security number, and you need to have your filing AGI from 2022 to be able to get past here. I did see a question that said, is the basic information to include the volunteer emergency worker credit? And unfortunately, it was not. Part of it's just the timing and different things. So it has not been added. So those who are going to be using that volunteer emergency worker credit will not be able to use MyTax Illinois this year. And yes, it can be saved. You can start it and you can save it later. There's a save draft button at the bottom of the form, and you can click that and save it later to come back to be able to do that. One other thing on there, if you are filing married filing joint, you will have to have the social security number and the AGI for both the prime and the spouse. Now, the AGI will probably be the same if you were married in the prior year, but if you were filing separate or filing newly married, then you may have different AGIs that you have to work through to be able to get past the identity verification page. You just click next, and then it'll take you to the personal information page. This really hasn't changed. The only real change on there, and it's probably wouldn't even be noticed, is that previously in 2023 there was a button that if you wanted to make changes, you had to mark yes or no. That is taken away. You can freely edit as you need to, and make any of those questions that are determined to be able to go through. And that. So if you need to update your address, you can update your address on this page. Anything like that. The next page we're going to come to is the income and subtractions. This is added 2 lines at the bottom in 2022. The information only showed for the military W-2. So if you had military income, you could subtract that out. With the additions of the U.S. Treasury bonds, bills, notes, savings bonds, things like that, that line was added just under the military pay. And then below that is a yes no toggle button as to whether or not you had a 529 plan. So either Bright Start or Bright Directions. You do have to answer this question, but that just helps determine what's going to be seen next. If you mark no, then it won't ask you any further questions about that 529. And if you mark yes, the next page will be about that 529 information. So if we filled all that out and everything looks the way we need it to, we can hit next. And then the 2023 Illinois 1040 529 page, this is new because of that additional line. When this shows up, it will have a place that if you need to add records, you just hit add a record in one of the 3 places that it exists on the screen. Once you hit add a record, it will create a record there. And all you have to do is put in the account ID for that 529 plan and then the contribution amount. Now, previously, a couple years ago, you had to mark whether or not it was a gift, and it was a gift, you had to add an upload to show that it was gift, and that's not required on here. You just need that account number and you just need the contribution amount. If you've contributed to multiple, so if you have more than one kid, or if you are making a gift to a series of grandchildren, you can hit add a record and then just add as many as you need. If you accidentally add too many, you can highlight that and make sure you're tabbed over to that information, and you can just hit delete a record when you're on that one, and that will go away. So any ones that are there will have to be filled out so that it doesn't error. But like I said, if you accidentally get too many, go ahead and delete it. It's not going to affect anything beyond that. The next thing is the exemptions. This is not changed. It's still going to ask you whether you're 65 or older, if you're legally blind, and then if you have any dependents. And you mark yes or no on those. If you mark yes to the dependents, then it will ask you further questions about dependents. If you mark no, you won't see any more information about that as you're going through this return. So if we hit next, we get to the dependent information. If you filed using MyTax or thing and we have the information available, prior dependents will be pulled into the system and you can change that as you need to. If you're divorced and it's not your year to claim the dependent and it was last year, you can delete that out so that it doesn't show up. And you can add, if you had a child born this year, you can add and delete as necessary depending on what's going on there. If you need to add one, you can hit that add a record, and then you just add that information. The big change comes with the earned income credit information. Just like we are adding it to the paper forms, we did add all the changes for EIC or EITC to the MyTax Illinois option for filing. So one of the things that you'll go on the top part of that form, it'll have a question. Do you have qualifying children to claim for EIC that were not dependents. If you don't, that's fine, just mark no. And if you do, you'll mark yes, and when you hit next, you'll be brought to a page where you enter the information or confirm the information for those qualifying children. Now, the next question is, did you qualify for earned income credit federally? This is a required question. You need to mark yes or no to that. If you mark yes, the field on the screen below that question will appear, and it's pretty simple. You just go to your federal return, you just put in that dollar amount that you qualified for federally, and it will calculate the 20% of that going forward, and you don't really have to worry about anything else. If you mark no to that, that is where we're going to have the information about recalculating to qualify where you didn't qualify federally. So if you fall in line with that 18 to 25 or 24 years old and you don't have children, you can you would mark no because you didn't qualify for it federally, and then as you go through the thing, it would ask you some additional questions to fill out to recalculate to see what you would be eligible for the state. If you had a child or a spouse who had an I-10 number, same thing. You're going to mark no. You mark no if there's any reason that in part or whole you wouldn't have qualified federally. If you mark no, that field below where it wants you to put won't be there. You would just click next. And that brings us to, if you had marked yes to the qualifying children information, you would just put that information in there. If you have anybody, you can add, delete as you need to, fill out those questions. This is where you put those qualifying children if they didn't qualify as dependents. So this would be that I-10 child, any of that information you would put in there and be able to answer the questions there. Once we get past the qualifying children and you've entered all that information, you would need, this is the first page of the state-only earned income tax credit. So if you had marked yes that you qualified federally, you are not going to see this page. This is only if you mark no. There's going to be a series of questions. So there's 3 financial questions, and then there's a 4th question that is going to ask whether you were self-employed, meaning did you use the Schedule SE federally. So you'll have to have your federal return available to look at to see how you qualify there. That 4th question is required. You do have to mark yes or no, and again, it's really just having us go through so to determine what's going to be shown next on that return. So if we've filled all that information out, if we've marked no, we won't see another page. It'll go straight to the calculation page. Assuming that you've marked yes, that you were self-employed, it will have a self-employment worksheet that you have to fill out. Answer the questions. It'll tell you what federal lines to pull information off of, and you can go through each of those lines. It defaults to 0. There are links to any of the instructions that you need. Just go through those, answer those questions. Once you get past this, if you had state-only earned income tax credit, but you weren't able to, I just saw a question. At this time, you can't deduct ABLE or anything off of the 1299C using MyTax Illinois. It's just those 3 credits on the Schedule M that we allow. So if you get to the state-only earned income tax credit calculation, it will just take, it'll give you a figure that you need to look up on the federal tables, and the link is in the upper right-hand corner there. You can look that up, look up that number, and then you type in the amount that you would have been eligible for federally if federally they would have allowed it. So you just put that in, it'll calculate your 20%. That's good. This is what that page will look like if you were not self-employed and you didn't use the Schedule SE or any of those forms where you got that secondary page to fill out. If you were using the Schedule SE, it's going to have, we can see it on the next page. It is going to have two different amounts that you have to look up. It'll have the links so that you can look there, but you do have to look up both of those. One important thing to recognize is that you do have to complete both of those lines. The reason being is the system is going to compare those, and you get 20% of whatever the lesser amount is. And so if you only fill out one of the lines and it will default to 0 on the other one, it's going to take 20% of 0. And then when you get to the end, it'll look like you didn't get the credit, whereas it's just calculating it based on the lesser of those two options, and 0 is always going to be the lesser option depending on if there's something in the other ones. So if you have the screen and if you have it, make sure that you're looking both and completing both of those so that it can calculate the 20% and get you what you actually are needing when it comes to that information. Once we get past that, we are past the EITC credit and recalculation and all that. And we just, if you had marked previously that you had K through 12 education expense credit, here you can add that information and it has add record and you add that information. This is all the same that it was previously. This has not changed. If you had marked that you had property tax, it would then bring you to the property tax credit worksheet. That is all the same. There hasn't been any changes that were made from there. You still need all that information. To be able to access that, you're still going to need your property PIN number, the county, and all that to put in there. If you have multiple properties that are adjoined that you can take on there, once you put the first property in there, it's going to create additional lines. And so you'd be able to add as many as you need to. When we hit next, if we had claimed that we had use tax, you would need to be able to put that use tax in there. The use tax instructions are in there, and so you can look and either do it based on your AGI or use the formula to figure out how much that use tax should be. The only requirement is if you mark that you have use tax, it can't be left blank. And so it defaults to a number in there, so that shouldn't be an issue. So once we hit next, this is a place that has been reorganized. For 2022, the system was set up so that it would ask you about your W-2. Do you have a W-2? If you had a W-2 and you marked yes, and then it asked you a series of questions about the W-2, you had to enter that W-2 information. And when you went to the next step, then it asked about 1099s and all those other withholding options that we do. Not everybody has all of those things, and so it was just delayed getting the return completed by the user. So they added all those questions onto one withholding information page. The very top question is required no matter what. And it says, do you have any of these? And you'll have to mark yes or no. Assuming that you have a W-2 or a 1099, any of those things, you would mark yes, and it would open up the fields below for those remaining 5 questions or so. And you just mark yes or no depending on that, so that when you go forward, it's only showing you the questions based on what you actually have and not having to stop and answer questions about things that aren't relevant to your particular tax situation. So once we go through here, we're going to go mark next. I'm going to show the W-2 information, but W-2, 1099Rs, 1099G, anything like that, are all basically the same setup. When you go through, if we have the information on file, it will pull in the prior year W-2s. There'll be a series of, if you have multiple, there'll be a series of checkboxes, but there'll be a checkbox and you can just click next to that if you still have that employer, so you won't have to re-enter all the employer information. You'll still have to go to that tab, you'll still have to go to that information and be able to enter the financial figures, but you wouldn't have to re-enter the employer and spend time doing that. If you have a new employer, you would have to add that on the next pages, but this is for the prior. So once we hit next, there it will give a list of all the W-2s that are available. You can click in to the hyperlink to go to the W-2 or click the tab across the top to go to the thing. You will see a red circle on there until all the errors are taken out, and there will automatically be errors because you haven't completed the financial figures to start off the return. Here you can add W-2s. If you need to, if you got a new job, you can delete out W-2s if you don't have that job anymore. So if we were to add a W-2, we would have that series of information, or if we just needed to go to the W-2 and fill out that financial information. This has pretty much been left alone except for a few minor changes, which is removal of information. So you still have to enter line 1 or box 1 from the information. Line 2, enter the amounts listed on the CM and N on the W-2. Line 16, if 15 is Illinois. Line 17, if 15 is Illinois. And then if this isn't Illinois withholding, there's a checkbox to mark to say this is an Illinois withholding. It'll be assumed to be Illinois otherwise. The bottom portion were the local tax line. So if your city has a local tax, we used to have lines that wanted that information. We don't need that anymore. So that was just removed for the simplicity of filling out the form. So once you've added or deleted all of those W-2s that you need, we can go ahead and move on. And like I said before, you'd go through anything that you had marked yes to. So once we get past all of that, you'll get to the Illinois 1040 summary page. Now, this has changed slightly, only that the appropriate lines have been changed based on any updated editions. So that 529 plans, the U.S. Interest from Treasury bonds and things like that. All of that has been added, and so now you would see that. This is your chance to review all that information. If something doesn't look right, you can go back and follow the return back, fix the appropriate lines, and then get back here so that you're fixing and reviewing that before you actually submit the tax return. So if that all looks like, we're going to hit next. If you were in a situation in which you paid in more tax than was due as a result of credits, deductions, all of those things, you would see an overpayment page where it'll tell you that overpayment. It'll ask you if you want anything carried forward, and it'll ask you whether you want that direct deposited or a paper check. This is the same layout as last year. Nothing on this has changed. So if we have an overpayment, we can hit next. Otherwise, it would take you to the health insurance checkbox and additional information page. This is all remain the same. If you have a third-party designee, this is where you would mark that to make sure that your third-party designee can discuss your taxes if you call into our call center, the Department of Revenue, for that particular tax year. If you don't mark that third-party designee, then we would require a power of attorney, which is a whole separate form to fill out. So that third-party designee is going to be good for if you have a college kid who's working nights and thing that wouldn't be able to call us during the day, or if you have someone in the military who's stationed overseas that wouldn't be able to access. That's what that third party designee is really for. So once that's all reviewed and approved, we can go and hit next. And then we get to the signature page. This is just that you are testifying and verifying that everything within that return that you are about to submit is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge. You would just need to type in your name as it matches on the return. If you're filing married joint, there will be two lines, one for you, whoever the primary is, and whoever is listed as the spouse. So you would need to complete both of those to have both of you sign that return. Once we get that, we can hit next. And actually, we'll hit submit rather than next. If you're doing a non-login or a login return, it will have a box that comes up that gives you some basic information about the return. If it's a non-login return, we would put in that email information. So you would need to put in your email, and then you would need to confirm your email. That email is not like when we ask for it and you hit OK. It's not going to be like when you order something from Amazon, Kohl's, anything like that, where you immediately get an email confirming that you submitted the return. We just need it to associate it with the confirmation code that's going to come up, so that if you need to pull up that return, we can associate it with the return. So whatever email address you use, make sure that you keep that in your records, as well as the confirmation code, so that if you need to look up that non-login return, you'd be able to. So if we put in that email, or if we're doing a login return, we're just going to put in our password. We'll hit OK. And then it will have a confirmation screen. If you're due a refund, you're just going to have where you can print out the confirmation, you can hit OK and it'll move on, or you can actually print or save the actual request. My suggestion would be print or save the actual request, because it will have in the upper right hand corner, it's going to have the confirmation code and a masked version of the email address that you use to file. So you'd be able to have that information all together. You can see how you filed, and you'll get a tax summary by doing that. And you can either print it out and put it in your physical records if that's how you handle it, or if you just save it and save it to your computer, you can do that as well. If you owed the Illinois Department of Revenue money, there will be a fourth option on that confirmation page. It will be a proceed to payment button, so that you can make that payment if you owe anything. The payment's not going to be due if you owe anything for us. It won't be due till April 15th. And you can set a future date on that payment, or you can just get it paid the date that you're doing the return. That's fine. So once we get past that, we have successfully submitted the return. In the event that you have submitted it and then you suddenly realize, hey, there was a W-2 that got missed in the pile of W-2s that we had, we'll be able to go through, and at the very bottom on the main page of MyTax Illinois, so this is a non-login information, we'll be able to, you'll be able to go under the submissions panel, and there will be a link that says retrieve a return application or payment. You can pull up any of your non-login requests to be able to see what was submitted. So if we click that link, it's going to have a page, and that's where you would enter that email and that confirmation code that was put on that confirmation page that we talked about earlier. If you forgot the confirmation or you don't have that readily available, that is fine. You can kind of see down in that kind of orangish, reddish box, depending on how your screen reads. There is a link, and you can look that up. You just have to have some information regarding your return, or payment, and you'll be able to look that up. If you have your email and confirmation codes, you just enter that and be able to submit it. When that pulls up, if it's reading pending and you need to make it change, so you have till, for tax returns, you'll have till 5 p.m. the day that you submit it to be able to come in here, if it's a non-login return, and be able to pull that into a draft situation so that you can make any edits you need before you're returning. If it's after 5, then you will need to, and it's been pulled in and it's processing. Unfortunately, we can't make any changes at that point, and you would need to amend the return to fix anything. And you won't be able to amend that using MyTax Illinois. So you'd have to use either paper or third-party software at that time. But assuming that it's pending, you would click withdraw and be able to withdraw that information to be able to get in there. Once we click withdraw, it's going to want you to confirm that you want it turned into a draft from a pending situation. You mark yes. And then you would mark okay, that's what you need to do. It will now have a continue editing button, and you just follow that. In the upper right-hand corner, if you use delete, it's going to cancel that out completely. Right now you have a saved return and you can continue editing, make any changes that you need to, and then resubmit it. If on this page you hit delete, it's going to withdraw that, and you won't be able to do that. And print allows you to just print the return and be able to see that information. The next thing isn't exactly new for 2024, but it is something that we had starting in June of 2023. So we just wanted to get that information available if you missed the information, if you didn't see that. So beginning on June 26th of 2023, taxpayers were now able to respond to IIT or individual income tax, business income tax, and withholding income tax notices through MyTax Illinois. We'd been able to do individual income tax responses for a few years. So this is, you receive a return correction notice and you need to submit the information to show us all your W-2s or property tax information, things like that, to be able to get in and get that to us without having to go through the mail. As of June, we added the ability, like I said, for business income and withholding income. Sales tax or retailer's occupation tax has still not been added, but we do have 3 of the 4 major tax types that are able to be done. So if you have a MyTax Illinois account, if you are an accountant or you are processing information there, you can, if you have third-party access, as long as you have access to the person's to view letters or full access, you can do this on behalf of a client. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see those letters and do that. The links are going to be found in View More Account Options of whatever tax type there, and it's in the Letters and Messages box. And the third bullet point there, just mentioning it again, the sales tax still does not have a response option in MyTax Illinois, so it's just those 3 tax types. There are different eligibility requirements when you are responding to a notice. The first one, individual income tax or IIT, will only allow you to submit a response for tax years 2019 and later. This is regardless of when the actual letter was sent. So if you filed your 2018 return in 2023 and got a return correction notice, you wouldn't be able to use MyTax to upload that response. You would have to send it in manually. Business income and withholding income are really just based on when the letters are dated, and that has to have been dated 1/1 of 2021 or after. For either of those, business income tax does have an additional requirement that if it is an RCN, it must have a notice code listed on the notice. So if it's an old return notice, you wouldn't be able to respond to that only if that notice code is there. And if you're looking at that RCN for the bit, it'll say right above the thing that says we've found problems for whatever tax type, it'll say notice code and then give a 2-letter code. Then you can use that to file that in that case. So how do we actually respond to the notice? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sign into MyTax Illinois. If you're third-party access, then you're going to have to go to that client in your list in the summary. You're going to go to where it says the tax type, and then it'll say view more account options, and that's where we want to click, is that view more account options. In the letters and messages, if there's any letters that are available to click, or if you have access to it, it will say respond to a notice. We're going to want to use that link, respond to a notice. Now, one thing to note there is if you are trying to respond to an examination letter from our Fed State Exchange unit, they have their own thing, and it'll say respond to a examination. There'll be audit responses that all have separate links. So this is just your general final notices, return correction notices, things like that before it's gotten into collections and different aspects there. I did see a question about whose account you should be doing this through. Department of Revenue best practice is that your client would have their own MyTax account. You as the accountant would have your own MyTax account, and you would have requested third-party access to that person, and they would have to allow third-party access and get all that. If you have questions about that, you can call our call center. You can email rev.mytaxhelp@illinois.gov, and they'll be glad to help you with any of that information, just so you have it set up correctly. But you would need to do it through your account, your logon, and make sure that you have access to that client. So once you click respond to a notice, you'll be brought to a page, and it'll have several columns. The first two are view and respond, and then the third column is those letter IDs, and then it'll tell you letter type and the filing period for that. If you just want to look at the letter, so you're just wanting to read the letter, you just want to see it, you're going to hit view. If you want to respond, that's where we hit respond next to the correct letter ID. If you need to request abatement, our MyTax account, MyTax was down because of maintenance this past weekend. So if you had something due the 15th, and you came in after 5 and you get a penalty, and you get that final notice, you could go into your MyTax account, put in your information to state why you couldn't get that in on time, and then be able to respond to that and get an answer. Once you get into that information, it will give you the page where you can respond. There's a message box that comes with a default message. That is all editable. So if you want to change the message, if you feel like you need more information, that's fine, but it does come with a default message. Then hit add. Add is where you're going to add the documentation, whatever we ask, whatever your response is. When you click add, you can put in the description, and then you're going to choose file, and this would just be how you do it, like you're uploading anything. You're going to find that file, you're going to upload it, it'll associate with it. Once it's there, you can hit OK, and it will attach it to the thing. There are certain file types that are acceptable and certain ones that we can't accept. The first column there are the ones that we will accept through the program. .pdf, this is a pretty simple one. Most programs have it where you can turn it into a PDF, save it as they're printed as a PDF, and be able to use it. So that's probably the easiest one. If we will accept Excel sheets, as long as it doesn't have macros. So if it's .xlsx, but not .xlsm, then we would be able to go through that. Word docs, JPEG, PNG, pictures, things like that, we can all accept through that upload. We can't accept PowerPoint presentations, and we can't accept, like I said, anything with macros, which would be like PowerPoints with macros built in or Word docs with macros in it. That's what that M stands for. And then the maximum file size is that 50 MB. So once you get that uploaded, you'll see that at the bottom. It'll give a link. You can open that up to make sure that it shows that information. Once all that's in there, we can click submit. Once you click submit, it will give you a confirmation. It's not the same confirmation like if you're filing a return. This is more just confirmation because this is seen more as like sending us an email versus submitting a tax return request. So if you want to see that information, it will be in the messages out box. And to find that, you would go to that letters and messages, hit view account messages. Once you've hit view account messages, you'll see that outbox to the immediate right of the inbox. When you're clicked in there, you'll see any of those responses that go in there. You can view the letter by clicking the hyperlink. And it'll open up that message. You'll be able to download that information. You'll be able to see when in that column all the way to the right, you'll be able to see exactly when it was submitted, the date and the exact time. And that's how you would know that it is submitted. You can go ahead and go in here. There's not a reason to submit the same information 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times. If you have additional information, you can respond again. And then all of those associated with that letter would be worked all at the same time. But like I said, there's no reason to send the exact same information multiple times. That may slow down the process. And so that's kind of all the stuff with that within the MyTax account. One of the things that we are excited to be able to add this year, when we added two-step verification, originally we were coming into applying and agreeing with industry standards. And one of the things that was industry standard that we couldn't implement at the time was the option to receive your code by text message. This is something we are excited about. And so now you'll have all three of those options: authentication app, text messaging, and email. In your account, when you go to manage my profile, you can set up any or all or multiple of those. Authentication app only allows you one of those, but text message and email, you can set up multiple of those to go into the account. I think this is going to make things a lot easier. I know that was a point of contention, so we are excited to be able to have that go out. So if you'd already set up two-step verification, you would sign into your account, do your two-step verification the way that you had. In Manage My Profile, under the Profile tab, under the Security panel at the very bottom, it'll tell you how those are sent. So like here, it just says codes are sent by email. There is a change two-step settings. Click that, and you will be able to change all of that. You'll be able to add your texting as an option. any of those things that you need to is going to be found in there. Now, if you are setting it up for the first time, so if you set up MyTax for the first time, that you're going to have those 3 boxes. You'll be able to set that up immediately. That's really only if you need to go back and set it up. And say it works. I set it up on my own MyTax account, and the text messaging works really well. So when you hit Add Phone, you're going to need to put in the country. So it has a drop-down menu. It defaults to yes, or it defaults to the United States. And then you just put in that phone number. If you need to change to some other, you can change the country code or country information there. And then you just hit save. And now you've added your phone and it goes through. So the next thing we'll look at is like, what am I expecting to receive when that goes through? If you've used any of these options before, it's the same, but we'll kind of go through this as we go. So when you receive that text message, you will get a 6-digit code in your email, just like if you're signing into your Google account or Amazon or any of those where they send you a code. If you no longer want that phone number associated with your account, you can either go into your MyTax account, manage my profile, and fix it there, or on the text thread, you can just type stop. If you do this, it removes that phone number in association with the account. So you wouldn't receive that anymore from there, but you also wouldn't necessarily have that if that was your only means of 2-step verification. The next time you sign in, it's going to ask you to set something up. If you do stop, it's going to send you just a network message that just confirms that you have submitted that and that you no longer want that there. It also gives you some information about how to reset that up if you are going through. If you decide, wait a minute, I accidentally wrote stop, I really do need this associated, all you have to do is either type the word start or the word unstop. Either of those will make that connection again, and you'll be able to do it, and then you'll get another network message. If you've deleted that thread, that text thread, you can still restart it through your phone just by putting in start or unstop to 888-732-5066. And again, that's 888-732-5066. And then it'll send you a message saying that that has all been thing. But again, set this up. It's an exciting thing to be able to offer this as an option. The next thing that we have added, and this really isn't an addition, it's an addition to MyTax, but it's not a new program. There was another program outside of MyTax, and they're just bringing that into it. It's a place to submit bulk W-2 or 1099 filing. And you can just do that where it says non-login return or report, it'll have that link. Just a point of note, it does not replace any logon options that are currently available. So if they have a WIT account in their MyTax account, or you do, you'll still be able to submit your W-2s and things like that through there. So you just click that. It'll ask for some contact information, put that in there, click next, and then you upload your file. Once you've uploaded the file and hit next, it'll evaluate it for errors. If there's any errors, it'll tell you what they are and be able to submit those. If you have any questions, contact our electronic filing area, same place that handles like fire and those kind of programs, and they'll help you get that fixed. The next thing is we have removed the ability to file the Illinois 1041 and Illinois 990T completely from MyTax Illinois. previously we had just limited it to fairly clean returns without the without like non-resident forms, things like that. And then we limited it to just returns for tax year 2021 and before. Now we're far enough out that we are just removing that entirely. You'll still be able to make payments to any of these tax types, but you just won't be able to file those particular tax returns. The next thing, and as I kind of finish my section, is as Mary Beth talked about earlier, with the Invest in Kids program ending, those pages and links for the most part are being removed from MyTax Illinois. Now, if you're a service urgent at the SGO, there's probably going to be on there for a little longer just to get any final reports, things like that done. But as of the beginning of the year, it should remove any links that will help you request a credit, see any additional information, things like that in the individual and bit accounts. But those credits are still going to be available to use on the Form 1299C for the next 5 years.